What happens after you pass a law? We spend so much time talking about the fight to get a bill signed, the committee hearings, the testimonies, the late-night negotiations, the tense votes on the floor. But when the governor's pen hits the paper, the work isn't over. In some ways, it's just beginning.
Exactly. And that's what makes Maine's story so fascinating. They didn't just legalize plug-in solar. They created a real-time test case for what it takes to actually build a consumer market from scratch. How do you find compliant products? How do you train electricians in rural areas? How do you make sure the people who need this technology the most, renters, seniors on fixed incomes, people in older homes, can actually use it?
Today, we're going behind the bill in Maine. We're looking at LD 1730, which was signed into law by Governor Janet Mills on April 6, 2026. This made Maine the second state in the country, right after Utah, to explicitly legalize plug-in solar.
We're going to hear from the advocates and lawmakers who built this law from the ground up. Representative Gary Friedman, who sponsored the bill in the House, alongside Senator Nicole Grochowski, Amy Eshoo from Maine Climate Action Now, and Beth Woolfolk, who helped spark the whole idea while working at A Climate to Thrive and later transitioned to the Post Road Foundation.
It's a story about grassroots organizing, energy democracy, and the messy, complicated reality of turning a great idea into something you can actually plug into your wall. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Plug-in Solar Explained. I'm Lisa, your consumer advocate.
And I'm Mike, your policy and technical expert.
This is Behind the Bill, our special series where we dig into the state laws that are making plug-in solar legal across the country. Today, we're heading to the Pine Tree State, Maine, LD 1730.
To understand how plug-in solar came to Maine, we have to start with Beth Woolfolk. She was working as the manager of community energy planning and policy at a nonprofit called A Climate to Thrive, and she was looking for solutions.
Right. Federal clean energy incentives were feeling uncertain. Funding opportunities were unpredictable, so her organization started looking internationally. What were other countries doing to expand solar access? And that search led her straight to Germany.
In Germany, small plug-in solar systems are already everywhere. They're a normal part of the consumer energy landscape. And for Beth, this idea immediately clicked. It matched a massive gap she had seen in her years of community energy work in Maine.
The gap is simple but profound. Lots of people want solar, but they can't get it. They can't afford a $20,000 rooftop system, or they don't own their roof, or their roof is shaded or too old, or they live in rental housing.
So Beth started looking for U.S. examples, and she found Utah. Utah had just passed the first plug-in solar law in the country. That became the initial model. She brought the idea to A Climate to Thrive's Energy Committee, got their support, and then took it to the legislature. It's a great example of how one state taking the leap can immediately provide a blueprint for others. Utah proved it was possible, and Maine decided to see if they could adapt that model for their own unique challenges.
She approached Representative Gary Friedman and Senator Nicole Grochowski. Amy Eshoo also got involved through a roundtable hosted by Maine Climate Action Now. And suddenly you had this coalition of grassroots advocates and lawmakers trying to figure out how to translate a European consumer product into Maine state law.
And Amy Eshoo made a really interesting point about this process. She described it as a grassroots effort by people who had never written this kind of bill before, but they were willing to ask questions, seek technical help, and just keep pushing.
And that became one of the defining features of Maine's approach. They didn't just demand access. They actively tried to understand the safety and implementation problems that access would create. They were pragmatic from day one.
So why did Maine care so much about this? It really comes down to three things: affordability, access, and energy democracy. Let's start with affordability, because Maine's electricity rates are brutal right now.
They really are. Central Maine power rates have risen 68% over the past 5 years alone.
The average residential electricity rate in Maine is hovering around 27.9 cents per kilowatt hour. To put that in perspective, that is one of the highest rates in the entire country, and it's putting an incredible squeeze on family budgets. When your baseline electricity cost is that high, every single kilowatt hour you can generate yourself is worth a lot of money.
Representative Friedman has a lot of practical climate experience. He helped form A Climate to Thrive, served on the Bar Harbor Town Council, and works on community solar and municipal solar projects. His own home runs on community solar, which supports his heat pump, hot water heater, and electric vehicle. But when he was testifying for this bill in the legislature, he focused directly on those high electricity bills.
Because it's an immediate crisis. Low and middle-income households in Maine are being hit incredibly hard. Plug-in solar offers a way for people to do something smaller, cheaper, and more immediate than a full rooftop installation. It's a way to take a bite out of that bill right now.
Amy Eshoo and Beth Woolfolk brought another crucial lens to this: energy democracy. This is about helping the people who have been structurally left out of traditional solar markets.
Exactly. Renters, lower-income residents, people without suitable roofs, or homeowners who just don't want to take out a massive loan for a major rooftop system.
And Maine's demographics make this especially urgent. Amy Eshoo pointed out that Maine has one of the oldest populations in the country and some of the oldest housing stock.
Think about a senior on a fixed income. They might not want to invest in a 20-year rooftop solar system if they expect to move or downsize in a few years. Or think about a homeowner who needs a new roof before they can even consider solar, but they can't afford the roof repairs. A portable, lower-cost system that you can pack up and take with you, that fits a completely different set of needs.
The original dream of plug-in solar is that it's purely plug-and-play. You buy it, you put it outside, you plug it in, and you're done. But Maine's legislative process quickly revealed that implementing this in the U.S. isn't that simple.
Right. Representative Friedman noted that the biggest challenge was satisfying the concerns of utilities and electricians, and their concerns are valid. Europe's electrical systems are different from those in the United States. In Europe, the standard is 230 volts, and their grid infrastructure and household wiring are built around that. In the US, we operate on a 120-volt standard for standard wall outlets. You can't just take a European device and plug it into an American wall without seriously considering the differences in how the power flows and how the safety mechanisms work.
So the advocates and lawmakers had to dig into the weeds. They had to think about household circuits, outdoor outlets, the risk of backfeeding power onto the grid, line worker safety, and at what point a system gets big enough that you really need an electrician involved.
The result was a compromise. Maine's approach distinguishes between smaller systems and larger ones. The total cap is 1,200 watts, but they created two tiers.
Tier 1 is for systems up to 420 watts. For these smaller systems, DIY installation is allowed. You don't need to notify the utility, and you don't need an electrician. It's as close to plug and play as it gets. You can buy the panel, set it up on your balcony or in your yard, plug it into a standard GFCI outlet, and start generating power. It's simple, straightforward, and highly accessible.
Beth Woolfolk and Amy Eshoo admitted they had hoped for a more purely plug-and-play model across the board. But after talking with electricians and line workers, they decided to err on the side of safety.
And that's a consequential decision. It makes adoption more complicated for those larger systems. It raises the upfront cost because you have to hire an electrician. It might make it harder for renters if their landlord has to approve electrical work or an outdoor outlet.
But Amy Eshoo said the safety issues were serious enough that other states really need to engage electricians and line workers early in their own legislative processes. They reviewed the potential hazards in detail, including the need for rapid shutoff and protection for line workers and people handling the equipment.
So the conversation in Maine shifted. It became less about, can someone just buy this online, and more about, how do we make sure the product, the outlet, the circuit, the installer, and the consumer instructions all line up safely?
When you bring up a new distributed energy policy, you usually expect massive pushback from the utilities. But Representative Friedman said the opposition in Maine was actually relatively light compared to other energy fights.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of Maine's major investor-owned utilities raised detailed concerns, while the other didn't take a strong position. Their main focus was on safety and compliance, rather than just trying to kill the bill outright.
Beth Woolfolk said the utilities wanted to make sure these systems aligned with Underwriters Laboratory standards, specifically UL 3700, and the National Electrical Code. And Maine's law is actually the first state law to specifically reference UL 3700 by name.
Another thing that helped reduce political friction is that Maine's policy does not turn these small plug-in systems into full net energy billing projects. You aren't selling power back to the grid for a credit. You're just offsetting your own usage behind the meter. That removed a huge flashpoint.
But there is still a utility interaction required for those Tier 2 systems over 420 watts. Notification. The law requires utility notification, not utility permission.
That distinction is critical. Notification means you are just informing the utility that the systems are being used in a given area. It is not an interconnection-style approval gate that blocks ordinary consumer adoption.
Even notification, however, has become part of the implementation headache. Amy Eshoo mentioned that advocates reviewed a proposed notification form from the Public Utilities Commission, and they found it way too technical for the average ratepayer to understand.
And that's the reality of implementation. A legal form isn't enough if ordinary residents can't understand it. For the advocates, fixing that form is now part of the work. If people can't figure out how to notify the utility, the policy fails.
This brings us to the core lesson of Maine's story. A law is only the beginning. Now they have to make it work in the real world, and the advocates are tackling this on multiple fronts.
The first major hurdle is product availability. A Climate to Thrive, including current manager of Community Energy Planning and Policy, Naomi Albert, and Maine Climate Action Now are working on the practical rollout. They need to find products that actually comply with the law, specifically that UL 3700 standard.
Because right now, you can go online and find hundreds of plug-in solar products. But as Amy Eshoo emphasized, not every product you find online is legal, safe, or compliant under Maine law.
Which creates a really awkward public messaging situation. The advocates have to tell people, great news, we passed the law. But wait, don't buy anything yet. Consumers shouldn't assume they can just grab any device off the internet and plug it into their home.
The second massive hurdle is electricians. For those Tier 2 systems, you need a licensed electrician. But Maine is a very rural, geographically spread out state. It's not like living in a dense city where an electrician is 5 minutes away. In many parts of Maine, getting an electrician to come out to your house can take weeks or even months. And the travel time alone can cost more than the actual labor.
Right. The people who could benefit the most from a small solar system might be the exact same people who have the hardest time getting an electrician to travel for a small job.
But Beth Woolfolk and the advocates have a really smart idea to solve this, and it involves bulk purchasing. Beth had contacted manufacturers early on and realized that shipping these panels is a huge part of the cost.
So the idea is a community bulk purchase model. A town or a nonprofit organizes a bulk buy of compliant systems. That brings the unit cost down significantly. Then they bring in a trained team of electricians to install multiple systems in one geographic area over several days. Instead of an electrician driving an hour for one job, they drive an hour and do 10 jobs in the same neighborhood. It's a logistical solution to a very real geographical problem.
It's brilliant. It reduces travel costs for the electricians, it lowers the installation barrier for the consumer, and it helps the electricians get familiar with this new category of technology all at once. Plus, it seeds enough early systems in a community that neighbors can actually see them working.
They're also looking at consumer-facing infrastructure. Can partners like the Office of the Public Advocate help with education? Can they build lists of compliant products, directories of trained electricians, and simple landing pages that tell residents exactly what they can safely buy and how to proceed?
That's the unglamorous work that makes a policy real.
Let's talk about renters, because plug-in solar is almost always pitched as the ultimate renter solution. But in Maine, the reality is a lot more complicated.
In principle, yes, the law gives renters the legal right to use these systems. If a renter already has the right outdoor outlet and a supportive landlord, a small system could be a meaningful way to participate in solar.
But here's the catch. Maine has some of the oldest housing stock in the country. Many rental properties do not have modern, accessible outdoor outlets.
Beth Woolfolk pointed out that the National Electrical Code, specifically NEC 210.52, requires at least one accessible receptacle outlet on balconies, decks, and porches attached to a dwelling unit. But that's for newer construction or renovations. An old apartment building in Portland might not have that.
And if you need to install a new outlet or run a dedicated circuit for a larger Tier 2 system, you suddenly need the landlord's permission to do electrical work, which means the landlord can say no.
This is one of the most vital policy lessons from Maine. Legal access does not automatically equal practical access. A renter might have the legal right to use the device, but still be blocked by building wiring, a stubborn landlord, product availability, or the cost of an electrician.
Amy Eshu said she hopes builders and developers will start thinking about plug-in solar readiness in new construction, just as they might plan for EV charging or other electrification needs.
There's one more piece of the puzzle in Maine, and it's a big one: batteries. Advocates are seeing massive interest in plug-in solar systems paired with small batteries.
And it's not just about shifting solar power to the evening to save money. It's about power outages. Maine gets hit hard by winter storms and nor'easters.
Amy Eshu noted that many Mainers would highly value even a small backup power source during an outage, just enough to charge a phone, run a laptop, or keep basic communication devices going.
Beth Woolfolk brought up refrigerators. For a household using SNAP benefits, losing a refrigerator full of food during a multi-day power outage is a devastating financial blow. A small plug-in solar and battery system could keep that fridge running.
It turns this from just a clean energy product into a modest resilience tool, especially for lower-income households that absolutely cannot afford a whole home backup generator or a full solar plus storage system. But again, it requires education. Consumers need to know exactly what a small battery can and cannot do. It won't replace a full home backup system, but it might save your groceries.
When you step back and look at the big picture, Representative Friedman is very realistic about the scale of this. Plug-in solar is not going to solve Maine's electricity affordability problem all by itself.
The systems are small. It would take thousands of them to matter at the macro grid level. But he sees them as an important first step. It's a way for individuals to take some power back, literally and figuratively.
Beth Woolfolk connects this to the broader fight over interconnection. One reason the advocates wanted this carve-out is the principle that small consumer systems shouldn't be forced through the same agonizing, expensive administrative process as a massive commercial solar project, if the cost and administrative burden overwhelm the benefit.
She also points to a broader Maine energy landscape that includes time of use rates, net energy billing, battery policy, and future demand flexibility models. Her current work at the Post Road Foundation focuses on demand flexibility technology, and she sees real-time data settlement and solar plus storage policy as part of the next layer of distributed energy.
In that sense, Maine's plug-in solar law isn't just about a small panel. It's about whether ordinary residents can become participants in a more flexible, distributed, consumer-facing energy system.
Maine's experience offers several lessons for other states considering plug-in solar. First, start with people who are excluded from traditional solar. Renters, seniors, lower-income households, people in older homes, and people without suitable roofs all have different barriers. The law should be designed with those differences in mind.
Second, talk to electricians and line workers early. Maine advocates began with a plug-and-play vision, but the safety discussion changed the final design. Early labor engagement helped make the bill more credible and safer.
Third, do not assume that passing a law creates a market. Advocates still need compliant products, retailer availability, electrician pathways, consumer education, simple forms, and trusted local partners.
Fourth, think about implementation before the bill passes. Beth Woolfolk's bulk purchase idea was not an afterthought. It was part of the vision from the beginning. If shipping and installation are major costs, community-based programs can help make access real.
Finally, be honest with consumers. Plug-in solar is promising, but it is not magic. It will not power a whole house. It may require an electrician. Not every product online is compliant. The path to adoption must be safe, clear, and understandable.
Asked what he would tell a Maine resident curious about plug-in solar, Representative Friedman said it is a way to take power into your own hands, save money with a quick payback, and take a small but significant step on climate change.
Amy Ishu's near-term message is more cautious. Wait until compliant products and installation pathways are ready. Maine has created a legal pathway, but the safe consumer market still needs to be built.
Beth Woolfolk's message is that the potential is real, especially for people who have wanted solar but have never had a practical way to own or use it. The next phase is not just about selling panels, it is about making sure the people who need the technology most can actually use it. Let's get to the bottom line. Mike, what are the key takeaways from Maine's LD 1730?
Number one, a law is only the beginning. Maine proved that passing the bill is just step one. The real work is implementation, finding UL 3700 compliant products, training electricians, and creating consumer education materials that normal people can actually understand.
Number two, safety requires compromise. Maine advocates started with a pure plug-and-play vision, but after engaging with electricians and utilities, they created a two-tier system. Under 420 watts is DIY. Over 420 watts requires an electrician. It adds cost, but it ensures the rollout is safe and credible.
And number three, legal access doesn't always equal practical access. Maine's old housing stock means many renters might not have the outdoor outlets they need. Policymakers have to think about the physical reality of the buildings people live in, not just the text of the law.
If you want to read the full text of Maine's LD 1730 or track where plug-in solar bills are moving in other states, head over to pluginsolarus.com and check out the state tracker.
And if you're in Maine and wondering how much a system could save you against those 27-cent electricity rates, use the savings calculator on the site.
Thanks for listening to Plug-in Solar Explained. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Mike. We'll see you next time. Plug-in Solar US is an educational resource. Rules, codes, utility requirements, and product certifications can change. So always check current local requirements and use properly certified products.